Hey, I thought I would do a little bonus here to just combine all of these down into an actual sculpt. So yeah, this is everything that we've looked at. All that I've done is squash it all together into a single sculpt, and then from here, in theory, it should be relatively easy to turn this, to put some skin and fat on this and turn it into something recognizably human. And I think this is a kind of important step, you know, especially like you're building stuff up in an equal-shaped sort of way. Oftentimes we'll forget the fact that it is a human being that we're making, you know, and that it has skin and fat, and you know, it's not just pure equal-shaped anatomy meat. So the idea here is that if we have these big forms working well, then it should be pretty simple to get something that feels like believably human, let's say. Now, my main fight here is going to be the fact that we don't have deltoids on there, so that's going to give slightly unusual proportions, the fact that we've just got these kind of arms sticking out here. So I'm just going to put something here, and well, this is maybe an opportunity for us to quickly look at the deltoids, but we'll look at this more another time. It's a few things to bear in mind. They're coming really far down the humerus, much further than most people think, about halfway down, something like that. We have these three portions: posterior, medial portion in the middle, anterior portion at the front. And then, you know, I mentioned briefly this idea of the trapezius hooking up from the back, connecting that deltoid, connecting with the deltoid through there. That's going to be our biceps. Again, we'll be talking about this at another time. Triceps is maybe worth us touching on just a little bit because of this idea we mentioned about it getting caught in the chopsticks of the Teres Major and the Teres Minor. There's a tendon of the triceps. Okay, and I'll crop those arms so that they don't feel like a kind of amputation. But I'll do that later. So here we've got the main form of our pecs from our blocking before. Let's find those nipples again. Remember, they're pointing more or less outwards, upwards and outwards on that plane break. Through here, maybe we can find that break of that dominant triangle of the pectorals. Through here, that's the sternal angle, right? That's the manubrium meeting the gladiolus. So we may be able to find something there. And here, it's the pit of the neck, nice bony landmark that we can grab hold of there, and a bony landmark down here as well for the bottom of the sternum. And let's find those tenderness bands through here. Remember, see if you can find the different angles that each one of them will have. Make sure that we get finding the sharpness through here, this bony landmark, the iliac crest. Sorry, of the ACIS, the iliac crest itself. It's not a bony landmark because it's covered by the muscle of the oblique here. Right, this is the oblique mass through here, and then here, this is where it's thin. So if we were doing a final drawing or a final sculpt, we may not want to find actual obliques through there. Instead, I would rather hunt down the ribs, which are more likely to be creating some effect. Serratus, you can find the serratus by taking a line behind the nipple, something like that. We're unlikely to see more than 4 of them unless the arm is raised. Digging out that armpit, remember the armpit is essentially just the rib cage warm turning in, and then the meat at the front is pectoralis major. If you grab the meat at the back, what you'll be grabbing is teres major and infraspinatus. Let's spin around to the back just briefly. Take a look at this form. These forms here. I feel like my scapulas would probably need to come out wider. It can be quite difficult to judge some of these things until you actually put skin on them, and then it becomes much easier to see. So this is our spine of the scapula. Right, in this case a depression because this guy's got a degree of meat to him. And then this is our trapezius through here, and this is the thicker section of it. We may not want to find it too much down there, but we probably want to dig out the bottom of our scapula just a little bit, because there it's not covered by muscle, right? You've got the latissimus coming there, trapezius going there, scapula there. We're left with that little triangle. Finding the roundedness of the teres major, using that to differentiate between that and the flatness of the infraspinatus. Through here, whoomp, there's our line of the serratus. You don't want to have that as a sharp line, but oftentimes it's going to be a pretty visible line. Trim the latissimus down a bit, just remembering how thin that is. And then let's dig out these lumbar muscles some more. So got those two vertical columns, which are mirroring the vertical columns there, plugging into the base of the skull. Then these two slightly more oblique egg-shaped masses. That's all lumbar muscle, mass and muscle. That's the erector spinae, multifidus through there. The piscis, posterior iliac spine, right? If we trace the iliac crest, doing something like that, finishes there and then goes into the sacrum there. So see something like that. And here we're feeling the lats all the way down. That's going to be pretty unusual in life because of the fatty store that we have through there, or that men have. Slightly different in women. In men, you're more likely to see that break because it's stored just above the hip line. In women, it's going to be stored all the way up there, so it's going to give the impression of these long hips. I'm not going to do too much with the gluteal mass, but let's put something in here so the crop doesn't feel too weird. When we look at the gluteal mass, what we'll look at is how far we can get with this idea of butterfly wings through there, which will take us quite a lot of the way there. It's looking so peachy at the moment. Let's fill that out a bit. So you can see how much meat I need to add. The form that we had before was the form of the actual hip bone. So you can see how buried that mass is in the muscle. How buried that mass is in the muscle. That was a correct sentence. Okay. It's feeling a little bit top heavy through here. Probably made his hips a little bit too thin. Let's start to push all of these out through there, and potentially we can push that in through there a little bit. Okay, now as we hit the side view, there's not so much that we need to do in the neck through here. Just carving out everything that isn't that sternocleidomastoid. So here, carving down until we hit that mass through there. That's our trachea. Through the back, that's levator scapulae, and this is going to be a very thin movement of our trapezius coming around from the back through to the front. We want to be tricky about it. There is that external jugular vein that goes up. By the way, that lines up with the back of the jaw. And what else lines up with the back of the jaw? Front of the ear and front of the spine through there. So again, you can get a long way by chopping heads in half. Not much good that you can say about serial killers, but that's one good thing. They know that you can learn a lot by chopping a head in half. That neck's probably quite long. Again, that would be easier if we just put the head on there and then you'd have a point of reference. But for now, I'm just going with my gut instinct. Yeah, sometimes it's quite amazing how far you can get just by finding those main forms and then softening them and then just hitting a little accent here. So, you know, because this is sculpture, the accent is done through a transition, but if you're doing this in charcoal or painting, it'd be the same thing, right? You can just hit that bonk, that line a tiny bit harder, and should generally work out pretty well for you. Okay. If the pecs are big enough, we might start to get a crease underneath there. It's quite likely you'd get that in breasts as well. Well, let's see, we're at nearly 10 minutes of this demonstration. I don't know how much you want to see before you get bored, so I'm not going to push it too much. Let's work those arms just a little bit so they don't look too like they're from a different body type triceps bulging up high. Oh, right, and we said that we were going to, well, not only crop them, but more importantly, come on, crop. Okay, but more importantly, look at this connection with the scapula. So we've got teres major diving to the front, teres minor diving to the back, right, which we can't see because it's going underneath the deltoid there. But you see, bunk, the triceps, this is the long head of the triceps, just cheekily making its way in there to grab hold of the scapula. So the majority of the triceps is grabbing hold of the humerus bone itself, but there's that little bit that just grabs hold of the scapula. That can become pretty important when you're dealing with poses, like when the arm is stretched away from the body, to figure out the connection of the arm with the scapula. Through here, I'm just going to allow myself to find a little bit more serratus mass. You see that? That bulging out gives me a bit more of that strong V shape to the torso, making it a bit more masculine. And that comes from serratus, and decent sized deltoids will get you that as well. Okay, what else? Well, we can hit the tendon, the trapezius a little bit. Certainly here, this is where I really hunt for a little bit of sharpness through there. It's the trapezius. And then through here, you might find some sharpness as well, especially if you want to start finding the individual spinious processes. So the top one is always going to be C7. You don't see C6 through to through to the top, which is called the atlas, or C1, because that's too buried. You've seen how deeply the spine goes into the body, so you're not going to see them through there. But you can see a whole bunch through here, and you may also see some kind of feeling of the lumbar vertebrae through here, which are also buried deeply in the body, by the way. So it was foolish of me to say you don't see those because they're buried in the body. That's part of it, but they also have a ligament called the nuchal ligament that covers them and softens them. So either which way, I was right. You don't see them, but it's not just because they're buried in the body, because these are as well, but you can still feel their impact sometimes. And then pay close attention to the area that isn't lumbar and isn't serratus, because that's going to be rib cage. If you're being really clever about it, there's a muscle there called the serratus posterior inferior. You see sometimes in life, but I generally don't teach it. And then, yeah, of the latissimus, we're really just seeing it through here, right? And then we're kind of going to lose it through here, and we're very unlikely that we're going to see the tendon through there, and pretty unlikely that we're going to see any of it through there. When you see a line here, what you're looking at normally there is the bottom of the teres major. So the latissimus is normally coming up a little bit higher and kind of hugging that teres major in place, mothering it, like I said before. That's levator scapulae. And there are other muscles in here. When you open up an anatomy book, you'll see other stuff going on in there. I wouldn't give it much attention. Just, at most look for that levator scapulae. But even then, in a body type like this, you're going to risk over modeling if you do it. So you could just soften that instead, and that would work just fine. Shoulder pushing forwards through there, flat at the back. We're going to look at that more another time. So, well, what's that? 15 minutes. So yeah, not super polished and finished, but hopefully a good idea of how you can start to find these forms once you've got the main masses blocked in. And so what you can end up with here is a feeling of complexity. Actually, let me finish up by revisiting this area, because I think it's a good example of talking about complexity based off of simplicity, which is the only kind of complexity that you should look for. So here we're going serratus, right? And then let's just go for a sniff of the obliques, meeting that there. And then we know the obliques are coming all the way over there, but if you find that, it's going to feel very forced, very anatomical. So I would really recommend that you don't do that. That's not how you're going to see it in life. But then maybe we can find the ribs coming this way, right? And even the cartilage here. And we could look at the cartilage coming underneath that top section of the abdominals as well. So through here we can kind of cut diagonally through those abs, find a plane change through there. Boom, boom, boom. This is going to be the wavy cartilage coming down here. So what that means that we've described is bony landmark there, through to cartilage pushing out with bone on top. So that's 2 layers, right? Cartilage and then bone. And then through here, this is 2 layers as well, because it's cartilage through there with obliques on top, but we're essentially ignoring the obliques. Then we're going into finding bone through here, and then obliques through there, and then serratus through there. And each one of those forms is fairly simple, right? Obliques, just a flat mass there. Serratus, much more rounded, pointing forward to the front, and then the bony mass sitting underneath that. So we find all of that, kick it back, find a couple of accents, kick it back again, and suddenly we start to get the feeling that there's some kind of subtlety, some sort of life to that area, even though what we've done is, it's fairly simplistic, fairly direct and primitive maybe, And anyway, I will stop. Damn it, went over 15 minutes, but hopefully that was useful. Thank you.